Gabriel Davis is a polarizing player for the Buffalo Bills. Justin and I are going to talk about why that is today on TWB.
You are now listening to the Watering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Watering Buffalo podcast, the show here on the Buffalo Fan Base Network. I am joined with my co-host here, Jay Gods. How are you doing?
I'm back, baby.
Hey.
Overall doing pretty good. Had a pretty rough last month, but things are looking a bit better, and glad to have enough free time window to be able to get back on the show. I sure did miss doing this.
Absolutely, and we missed you too. And by we, I mean me, our executive producer, Jake, the whole Buffalo Fan Base Network, and of course, our loyal listeners. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been reaching out to Justin. Obviously, our thoughts are with you, and I think that I can speak on behalf of everyone to say that. So glad to have you back. Obviously, our thoughts are with you and your wife. Kind of weird to call her your wife. I'm still not used to that.
It's less than a year, baby.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, your wife, Borat style. Anyways, you can find this podcast as well as both of our social media accounts on most platforms and of course on YouTube. But to get into today's episode, we're going to be talking about Gabriel Davis. And Gabriel Davis, I think since coming into the league has kind of been a polarizing player. I would say that wasn't necessarily the case when he first came in. He had a lot of upside because he was like wide receiver 4, like then 3, and now he's wide receiver 2. And since making that jump from 4 to 2, I see a lot of division with him, and not so much of a division like, you either hate him or love him, but I think you have like this feeling where you're like, or he's like fantastic. You don't hate him. You just feel you're like, meh, it's all right. Or you are absolutely like, I love Gabriel Davis. He's the best thing that's ever happened since, like, I don't know, the round wheel or rubber wheels or something like that.
Sliced
bread. Yeah, that thing. I obviously that saying is not well with me, but anyways, so let's just get into the stats and then we can talk about the bad stuff. Then we'll go to the good stuff. Sound good to you?
I'm good.
Okay. So overall, he started about 30 games in he's going into his 4th season, right? Yeah, he's going into his 4th season. So he started 30 games. Interestingly enough, he only had 4 starts in the 2021 season. So that was just last year. Kind of really hard to like really wrap my mind around that because I thought he had a really solid second season. Overall, he has 118 catches on 218 targets. That's good for 1,984 yards, approximately 16.8 yards per route, and 20 touchdowns. So overall, I think he's produced a lot more than I would have originally thought. He got picked up in the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He was the 4th round.
Fourth round. That's right. For 4th round wide receiver, I think that in general is pretty good. What do you think?
I'd agree with you there, especially when you consider the context of this was when we were still bringing in the number 2 receivers to kind of let him work his way up to the depth chart. To have that production coming into the league with the likes of Manny Sands out there, Smoke Brown in the mix, Cole Beasley, just being down the pecking order. Just great numbers from somebody that was essentially like wide receiver 4. You don't see a ton of that across the league. So awesome numbers for, both his draft position and his position on the depth chart with the Bills.
Yeah, I want you to hold on to that thought because something just popped in my head to mention at the very end. So please remind me if I don't say it. All right?
All right.
All right, cool. Let's talk about the bad stuff here. And I'm going to kick this one off. And to no surprise, I'm going to be talking about his hands. Gabriel Davis's hands, he catches a football much better than you and I could ever do.
Darn tootin'.
But he does it so awkwardly, I think. And the only reason why I know this is because, one, I watch him play football, but two, other content creators like Joe Marino and other amazing people like Eric Turner have mentioned this, is that when the ball comes to him, he doesn't do that window of opportunity if it's like above his like shoulders where you make that diamond, or if it's below your waist, you kind of you put your pinkies together and then kind of like, I guess, cradle the ball into you. He does a little bit of both, and one, like, his left hand is like doing the under thing, and his upper hand is trying to do the window of opportunity, and he just kind of claps things together, like kind of like a gator, you know. And
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, he's a professional football player, so obviously it works for him, but fundamentally, the way that I was taught to catch, you don't do that. But, you know, obviously it works for him. And he's got like a 54% catch percentage. But interestingly enough, per playerprofile.com, he's got an 8.7 drop rate, which is number 8 in the league. That's not great. And I don't know if you can attribute that to his awkward catching style or just like bad hands. It just feels like his hands are just super weird, and those drops, as you know, Justin, are super frustrating, especially last year when it felt like the Bills had to fight really, really hard for their wins.
Yeah, and I hear a ton about Gabe Davis of, like, you know, putting it into context of like how many of these routes he runs are going deep down the field, and, you know, they're lower percentage plays to start with. So I can have a little bit of grace on that because, you know, how many of these balls are perfectly on target, you know, defender gets their hands in there, all that. What's most concerning for me with the drops is it's kind of like in those short to intermediate areas where I notice like his most egregious drops. Like, you notice them when it's a play to like move the chains, but kind of going into the drops, and I guess it's not quite the same. But one of the things that I noticed a lot more last year, and it's kind of going back to 2 years ago, he was Gabriel Davis, he was toe drag swag,
Count Dragula.
Yeah, how many of these balls he was pulling in on the sideline? It was like these,
the ability to suck in those balls.
Yeah, that. Just these amazing grabs that he was having on the sideline, barely getting his toe down, all that. And then last year, we didn't see that from him as much. There was so many times I'm watching a game where I'm like, and Gabe had that last year, like, and just, that was one of the things that was making him really special on the team. And maybe it's the ankle, we'll get into that, but just something I didn't see from him as much last year, to go with the drops that kind of increased.
Yeah, and to kind of build off of that and to go more into the bad stuff, is that you make a good point. The highlight, toe drags, toe taps, all that stuff happened a lot early. His first season, I'm thinking about that end zone against Miami, his first touchdown. That was a monster catch, like really hard to do. And then last year, or his second year, he had a lot of those toe tapping moments. Last year, to your point, he doesn't do it as much. And there's only one thing that I can point to that really changed. Well, two, if you want to be really specific. But one, he bumped up to wide receiver 2. He got the second best cornerback on the opposing team shadowing him. That's pretty hard to do. Or sometimes the number 1 cornerback. You saw the Jets basically double cover Stephon Diggs, and they put Sauce Gardner on Gabriel Davis, and Sauce Gardner is an amazing cornerback already. So do you think your 4th round wide receiver is going to beat out a already budding star at cornerback? I mean, that I'd say probably not, unless you have like a real gem at wide receiver too. And I'm not saying that Gabriel Davis isn't a gem, but let's just call it is what it is. He's not gonna win consistently against an opposing team's number one, and that's not to say that he can't. Again, it's just unlikely because the game planning is really, really hard. The second thing I'll mention here is the fact that again, to your point, he's running different routes. And maybe he would run something different if Brian Daboll was still in town, but he's not here anymore. We have Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey's play calling got a little vanilla midway through the year, and we got a little predictable. Gabriel Davis, what does he do? He bumps up into wide receiver 2. Maybe we become a little too predictable. Maybe Ken Dorsey's putting him in some routes that maybe Gabe can't excel in. There's a lot of this that goes into a player's performance, and I think that's why when you see players go to different teams and new opportunities, a la Stephon Diggs, you see them blow up because other teams, they bet that on themselves that hey, we can get the most out of this player because I don't think that this team is doing it right. I bet you we can.
Yeah, and you kind of got into their what I think I would categorize my biggest negative with Gabe Davis. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault, I guess. So he doesn't have that short to intermediate quick separation. He's not that fully complete receiver. He's not Stephon Diggs. And I put this one kind of more on the Bills organization and kind of like the opposite of what you just said with, another team taking a bet on a guy and then blowing up. I think this was a little bit of an over promotion with Gabe Davis. And I think he's great at the deep field stuff. But as like a true number 2 receiver, I think they not only failed him in kind of over promoting him, but also then not properly replacing that slot player. Because Gabe Davis isn't a guy that's going to thrive on, the quick slants and the quick separation routes. We saw him absolutely thrive with the broken plays, the extended plays, the plays down the field. And then, we lost Beasley and we expected McKenzie to fill in that short to intermediate, and that just didn't work out.
Or Jamison Crowder, but he breaks his ankle, then you got to rely on a rookie.
Right. So I think it's a little bit of an over promotion, but also kind of, I think Jamison Crowder's the big one there. They were planning on him being the Beasley replacement, and we never really got to see him. And
then you rely on Khalil Shakir. There's a lot that goes into it, yeah.
And then you're asking Gabe Davis to do more than your original game plan was.
Yeah, I agree completely. And like we just said, there's a lot that goes into game planning and what's going on. So it's not all on him, and we acknowledge that. And to follow up on something that doesn't necessarily seem fair is that his health sometimes has held him back. I think back to when I think he was a rookie, or maybe that was 2 years ago at the AFC Championship game, and Gabriel Davis was borderline, he might not play, he might play. He ends up playing, but he doesn't even do anything in that game. It's like, why did you even bother putting him out there? We should have gotten, oh my God, who was that wide receiver from the Texans that
Kenny Stills.
Yeah, he's like activated, but he's like a healthy scratch. It's just like I feel like a well rejuvenated Kenny Stills at that point would have been more effective than a hobbling Gabe Davis. And obviously Gabe Davis did nothing in that game, quite literally nothing. He was just there for, distraction or what, I don't know. And then I think about to last year's week 3 game against the Dolphins, where he was hurt the prior week, but he came back and he kind of produced, kind of didn't at the same time. It's just like, and that game was littered with injuries, and it's not an excuse. It's just an explanation. It just feels like that ankle, and it's always the ankle, right? That seems to be like hobbling him.
He's got ankles like mine. Be rolling those bad boys left and right.
Right. And The last thing I'll say before we kind of go into break and actually talk about the great stuff is that he's very streaky. He's like me when I play basketball. I brick a ball like 20 times in a row, but then as soon as I catch fire, I swear I just can't miss. And I'm just like doing the hard stuff so easy. Obviously, it's a very rare thing because you played basketball with me before, but when it happens, it happens. It's, I don't know. In his first full-time opportunity to be wide receiver 2, he showed that, again, he was streaky. He could go weeks on weeks and you wouldn't really notice him that much. And again, that kind of goes to the opposing game plan from the other team. Maybe they're doubling Stephon Diggs. You get Gabriel Davis has to beat the number 1 corner. And then you see other games where he's just doing crazy shit, a la Pittsburgh Steelers, 171-yard game. At least, what do you have? Two touchdowns?
It was
3?
220s.
It was just, that game was, and of course, that's the time I play against him in fantasy, and he single-handedly just destroyed my whole team. And I was like, oh, I'm playing Gabriel Davis this week? I'm good. He's been doing kind of weird, like all this, like whatever weeks, like we'll be good. And then I got blown out.
Yeah, obviously that AFC championship game against the Chiefs comes to mind too, when he had the 4 touchdowns. Just like definitely the moments where he absolutely blows up, and I think that's kind of when you see a team that's, we're going to eliminate Stephon Diggs, and it's not, their number 2 cornerback and a safety double teaming him. They're leaving their number 1 over there with help against Diggs, and Davis gets to go to work against the number 2 corner. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's part of seeing. So I think we got used to seeing Gabe Davis as this just like super high quality wide receiver 4. And I don't think he's ever really been terrible as a wide receiver 2. It's just not like it's not apples to apples. So I think he's kind of, last year we saw him as more of like middle of the road number 2 versus the previous year we got to see him as
the premium number 3,
like the best number 3, number 4 wide receiver in the league. So I think context matters there, and I'll get into that more as we get into the positives with him. I have more thoughts on that.
I totally agree. He's Jay Gods. I'm Two Changs. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brother Bill. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo Fanbase Network. So we just wrapped up about talking about the negative things about Gabriel Davis. Let's talk about a little bit of positives. I'm always a big proponent of, you rip off the Band-Aid, then you put the good healing stuff on there. So if we offended you, if you're a big stan of Gabriel Davis, we're sorry. We're here to make it all better.
We got the Neosporin.
Yeah, we got the Neosporin, or, whatever. Or the sliced bread,
Yeah, tons of sliced bread over here.
Tons of sliced bread. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I don't know the euphemism or whatever. Whatever. He's good. So let's talk about it. I personally am going to start off by saying I think Gabriel Davis is a phenomenal run blocker. And the Bills ask this man to do so much, and he doesn't complain. And for the most part, he does a pretty good job. Obviously there's times where he can't make those blocks, and it's usually against someone much bigger than him, or let's say, I don't know, a defensive end. I've seen him try doing that, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's like he got blown up, and what did you expect? It's Gabriel Davis versus arguably the most athletic person on that defensive front. But in general, I think he does a really solid job run blocking, creating lanes, setting the edge. Good guy.
Yeah, I'm glad you went to that with your number 1 positive, because it was right up there with mine. And I think something with the wide receiver position, like, that's very easy to lose, especially when it pans to the ball and it's like on the other side of the field now. But first and foremost, his willingness to block. You see a ton of receivers that kind of just go through the motions. Like, he's willing, he's fairly competent at it, and he's doing it every play. And that, like, some of my favorite receivers in the game, you think about like an Eric Moulds, Hines Ward was one of my favorite. These dudes were nasty blockers too. And I love that about his game. And that I was debating, that was like kind of my 1B. My 1A of what I really love with Gabe Davis is his off script, just on the same page with Josh Allen, of like how many times Allen breaks the pocket and Davis is, 20-30 yards down the field and he peels back and cornerback's not expecting it. Or I forgot what team we were playing, but the one play where the clock's running out right before half and we're all like, why aren't we kicking a field goal here? And Josh is rolling to the right and just barely gets it off as he's going out of bounds, and Davis is headed towards the corner of the end zone and just peels back that half step, and it's a touchdown right before half. Just they're so in sync with that, and I think that mixed with, I think we're going to see a little bit of a change in philosophy this year. I think we're going to see a little bit more run game, and I think that's I think that's going to play really well into Gabriel Davis's skill set there.
Yeah, and he's probably going to see a lot more burn, more so than he already was, and hopefully this kind of draws defenders in so we can hit them over the top or more in the intermediate routes. And I think we all remember one of the big criticisms of Josh Allen when he was first coming out is that this man can't throw intermediate passes for shit. And then the next year he just bumps up. I don't think it's a coincidence that that's the year we got Cole Beasley and John Brown, but and also Gabriel Davis. But I think that's something to note. And I think with a stronger run presence, better offensive line, Josh Allen not having to scramble out of the pocket like within a second of the play, I feel like this team is poised to make a real step in the right direction, and that only benefits players like Gabriel Davis. So my next point here, it's going to sound like a repeat, but those highs, man, of his streakiness are just absolutely 1,000,000% ridiculous. Just straight up ridiculous for who he is. You're talking about, again, 4th round wide receiver, just dropping 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in a playoff game against at the time Super Bowl defending champs, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. They were in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then after that, no, because the year before
was that the Brady one?
Yeah, because they got that. That's when because last year they got beat by the Bengals, and the year before that they beat us in the AFC Championship game, I think, and then they got absolutely destroyed by the Bucs, like absolutely demolished.
It's crazy how fast this time spectrum goes.
I know, it's yeah, you always really think about how quote unquote far ahead the Chiefs are from us, but they haven't been like, they've had their downs. They have had their downs. The higher you go up, the farther the floor is. Like, let's keep that in perspective. I know that us as fans sometimes get really frustrated that we can't get there right now, and it hasn't happened yet, but we're consistently in the dance and winning playoff games, which is really great to say. And Gabriel Davis is a part of that because, again, he has those ridiculous games. Without him, you maybe win the AFC East. I don't know. Like, if you take Gabriel Davis off of this, who else would you rather have? Who would you promote to take his spot? If you think Gabriel Davis is a better wide receiver 3 or 4, who's taking that spot? A free agent? Who? Someone on the squad? Someone on the team? Who? feel like a goddamn L.
So this actually plays into my next point too. Is I don't know if I necessarily consider this like a positive going for Gabe Davis, but kind of like my vision of this offense. And when I look at all the talent that we've acquired at wide receiver, you know, we still have Gabe Davis. You bring in Deontay Hardy. You bring in Trent Sherfield, Dalton Kincaid. I'm going to lump him in here. I'm going to call him a wide receiver for this exercise. I'm looking for this offense to kind of like go almost NBA and at wide receiver kind of be positionless. You're going to have Stephon Diggs be your clear and away number one. That's obvious. But when you look through the rest of that depth chart there, I think any one of these guys can have tremendous impacts on games in different ways. So like, yeah, we're in the slow time of year. Everybody's, you know, the next big thing we get is like the mini
Slice
camps
bread.
and training camps, some sliced bread. But everybody's going to start doing, you know, their depth chart projections and all that. And wide receiver is a position that I don't really care how you list it on the depth chart. All these guys are going to get their shake. And I think if you use the skill sets the way they should line up, Shakir looks like he can be evolving into kind of that more of a possession, third and cold type of role. Deontay Hardy's got the speed to burn underneath like McKenzie did. He also plays outside. You have Kincaid that's going to, you know, be inside in himself. Cole Beasley in a bigger body.
Swole Beasley. Yeah.
Right. And if you get, I like that. If you,
I can't take that. I believe someone I heard that somewhere, and I don't know where I heard it from.
Whoever said that,
I thought it was funny.
I like that.
Yeah.
So if you can take all those skill sets and blend them together in whatever, if you want to call Gabe Davis your number two, if we can get back to that usage that we had for him where he was, you know, the down the field beat you guy because you have to worry about Kincaid and Hardy and Sherfield underneath. And oh yeah, Diggs is still on the other side. I think when we see how the numbers shake out, we're not really going to care whether or not he's called the number two because he's going to produce the numbers with the right pieces around him.
I think to your point, and maybe this is the best way to say it, the sum are greater than the individual pieces.
Absolutely.
Right. And this is the last thing I'm going to say about the good thing about Gabriel Davis outside. Oh, well, two things. One really quick thing, and you already kind of touched upon it, is that the Bills absolutely love him. They talk about nothing but good things for him. They just absolutely have raving reviews. If he was an Amazon product, 5 out of 5 stars. That's how the Bills organization sees him. And the last thing I want to talk about is that he's probably going to get $11 million next offseason at minimum. And this might sound like, well, is that a good thing? Well, yes. Yes, it is, especially for Gabriel Davis. And it might also sound like a bad news because it's like, wow, that's $11 million. How are the Bills going to, stomach that kind of thing if they want to retain him, if they love him so much? But that's a problem for future Brandon Beane. But it does tell you one thing. And the reason why I came up with $11 million is I think about Jacoby Myers, who went to the Raiders. He got $11 million. You're telling me that Gabriel Davis isn't just as good, maybe if not better than Jacoby Myers?
Devontae Parker just signed for 11 per with the Patriots. He just signed an extension. So
you're telling me that Gabriel Davis isn't better than that? Come on, he's getting at least $11 million. Wide receiver 2, that stock is going up, and people are paying big bucks for that because people are paying big bucks for cornerback as well.
Okay,
it just makes a lot of sense. But like I said, what it does tell you is that he earned that money, and the Bills love him and praise him, and it's a good problem to have.
All right, so you got 3 options on the table for you. You're extending him before the season. You're trying to sign him in free agency, next year, or you're letting him walk? What are you doing?
Say that one more time. What are my 3 options? Oh, God.
You're signing him you're getting him an extension before the season starts. You try to bring him back next year when he hits the market, or you're letting him walk a la Tremaine Edmonds this year.
Am I trying to be predictive or what I would do?
We'll do what you would do.
I don't think he's going to take a low deal or a hometown discount. I think you gotta let him walk, which I don't necessarily like to say, but this team has shown that they can draft and develop and retain, which is the motto that Brandon Beane says, but money's tight. Money's tight like the Rock's t-shirts, right? So in this event, in this specific scenario, I'm saying we don't have enough money, and we're probably going to have to use that money in other places. I just think about the defensive line, and in general, like we got to pay attention to that a little bit more than wide receivers, in my personal opinion. But
fair enough. So for me, I'm team extend him before this season, and all of that stuff you just said. I feel you on that.
But you're wrong.
Couple things. If you can get an extension done before the season, I think you can kind of give him a little bump and say, we expect you to do this, but you can also, let Bean work his cap magic and figure out how he wants those cap hits to work. I think if he has the season I'm expecting to have, and we wait till free agency next year, there's not going to be a choice.
Way.
He's going to price himself out. But to your point of like the money that we'll have to spend on the defensive line, all things like that. I just watched an offseason where we went into the offseason minus 18 million in cap space, and we brought in some big names on that defensive line. Bean's getting these guys to come in. Poona Ford, Leonard Floyd. So I mean, these are shorter term deals. But Bean's been finding he's been finding a way to make it happen.
He's creative.
So I think if they want to bring back Gabe Davis, I think that there will be the opportunity to do that. And for what I'm expecting Davis to do with these pieces around him this year, personally, I'm getting an extension done before the season starts.
So that's what you would do, or that's what you think will happen?
That's what I would do. And if I'm being predictive, I also think that that's what would happen.
That's kind of where I'm at too. If I'm being predictive, I think that the Bills will retain him. I just think money is tight.
Yeah, but with all the messaging that you said, how much the organization loves him, how much Bean loves, draft, develop, retain. Yes, money's very tight. Salary cap's gonna go up. We got the new gambling and TV money hitting.
Fine. Don't gamble. Don't gamble, NFL players, or you'll get suspended.
There's always money in the banana stand.
Yeah, always money in the banana stand. You know what I don't understand? And I'm just gonna go on a quick side rant here. We're done talking about Gabriel Davis. Overall, we both love you, Gabe. We want you here in Buffalo, but at the same time, go get the bag. But you got to earn that bag. So go win a Super Bowl. I don't understand how Tyreek Hill can beat up someone, beat up kids, and not get suspended, and yet people just can do something legal like gamble and get suspended for the whole year, 6 games, something like that. And I'm not saying this just because Tyreek Hill is a Dolphin. I'm just saying in general, like, there's other players who've gotten in trouble for domestic violence and child abuse and stuff like that. It's just like, for real, NFL? Like, come on. Where are your priorities?
Yeah, it's different to me with like the Kelvin Ridley suspension was,
So
like
whack.
betting on the NFL. I can understand to an extent. You want to protect your product. You don't want like the integrity of the league to be in question. But like these dudes, like if you're not betting on the NFL, like the rule that they're breaking is they're doing it from the team facility, which whatever, you can say rules are rules, follow the rules and be smarter. But like at the same time, the the NFL.
So he does a dollar bet on his phone. He's done for the year.
If you get caught. But like the NFL is going to generate literally billions of dollars of revenue from these gambling partnerships that they just signed up for. Like, do whatever you want. Don't bet on the NFL and call it a day. There's gonna be a superstar that gets knocked for this at some point, and they're gonna do a whole lot of backtracking. And
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get it, but the consistency and severity of breaking rules makes no sense to me.
No sense.
You can beat kids. Don't get suspended. Gamble. Get suspended for at least 6 games. Stupid. Not consistent. Anyways, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Thanks for listening to that little side rant here. You can find Justin where again?
You can find me on any social medias. Just search up JGods22.
Same with me, but just search up Two Changs. You can find this podcast, again, the Wandering Buffalo podcast, on most social media and audio platforms. Of course, on YouTube. We do have a website at www.wanderingbuffalo.com, so definitely check that out. We got some good merch there. We are part of the Buffalo Fan Base Network. We would greatly appreciate it if you check out other episodes from our other fellow content creators on our network. And if you could leave us a review, rating, all that stuff, thumbs up, subscribe, we greatly appreciate it. But as always, and of course,
Go
Bills.
Bills.